All right. Good morning, everyone. Once again, Brian Zimmerman here, digital content editor for Jazziz magazine, here to welcome you to another episode of the Jazziz Daily Brunch, back at your favorite brunch place at the moment, the internet. I have reserved a corner booth for us today because we have a big name guest, none other than the remarkable Nathan East, and we needed room for his more than 2,000 recording credits as a bassist. I mean, Nathan is incredible. You know him from Foreplay, you know him from his solo albums, you know him from his work with Eric Clapton, Phil Collins, Michael Jackson, Daft Punk. Pretty much any song that has a groove, chances are Nathan East has played it. So we'll be talking to him. I'm also going to be joined by Jazz's publisher, Michael Fagan. And hopefully we won't be the only ones asking questions. You know, for those of you watching on Facebook or on YouTube, we really invite you to drop us a line just to say hello or ask a question to our very special guest, Nathan East, or me, or Michael, or anyone. A rhetorical question will do just fine. We are going to get into this episode in a minute. We're all really excited for it. But first, I'd like to thank some of this episode's sponsors. So they include Mac Avenue Records. This label has been showing us the road to great music for 20 years now. 2 albums by some very fine piano players are on the horizon for them. Connie Hahn's Iron Starlet, that'll be available soon, and Christian Sand's Be Water. Those are coming out later this year, not to mention some wonderfully reissued Errol Garner albums and an all-star tribute to Oscar Peterson called To Oscar with Love. Features Chick Corea, Benny Green, so many more amazing piano players. The 5 LP Deluxe Edition is out right now, and you can learn all about these amazing releases and more at macavenue.com. Another big thanks to Concord Jazz. So big news for them. Ella 100 Live at the Apollo is set for release on April 24th. This is an exciting album that celebrates the music and the life of the First Lady of Song, Ella Fitzgerald. It was recorded live at the storied Harlem, New York venue in front of an ecstatic audience. The concert and recording is produced by the 8-time Grammy and Emmy Award recipient and former Ella Fitzgerald musician, Greg Field. It features dynamic and loving tributes from a parade of contemporary vocal and musical giants, including the Grammy Award winner Patty Austin and multi-Tony Award nominated actor and singer David Alan Grier. The concert also features performances by Andra Day, Ledisi, Liz Wright, Cassandra Wilson, Monica Mancini, and the award-winning a cappella vocal group from Howard University, Afro Blue. Again, it'll be available on April 24th, and we're actually going to have Greg Field on the show on April 25th, which is, of course, Ella Fitzgerald's birthday. This episode is also, I should mention, more info available at concord.com. Lastly, this episode is brought to you by Blue Sound. So Blue Sound is an award-winning wireless, high-res sound system that lets you play music in any and every room throughout your home. Choose music from your favorite streaming service or from a music library connected to your home network. Control where, at what volume, and when the music plays with a free Blue OS app for your smartphone or tablet. So getting the kind of crisp and detailed sound that only an audiophile grade system can deliver has never been easier with Blue Sound. It is truly living hi-fi. Some products that Jazz's viewers might enjoy: the Node 2i wireless multi-room high-res streamer and the Pulse Soundbar 2i wireless streaming multi-room sound system. You can learn more on our website, where we have put together a Blue Sound buyer's guide, or at bluesound.com. All right. Whew. That'll do it for the sponsors. Let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Look who just walked into the brunch place. It's none other than Michael Fagan, Jazz's publisher.
Here with my good morning, everyone. Cheers.
Good morning, Michael. Funny running into you here.
I see you wearing your Jazz's t-shirt.
I absolutely am. I've got the merch on. I see you are too, and drinking from a Jazz's mug, no less.
Yeah, everyone needs to know that this was not planned. I said, I haven't worn a Jazz's shirt yet. I'm going to wear one today, and of course Brian wears one too, and I brought my Jazz's mug. This one you may like. It's a cover that we did quite a few years back with Kenny G. We have a lot of fun with Kenny. We love Kenny. He's really great to work with, and we just had a little fun with this cover story. And the headline is, "Oh my God, they killed Kenny," and it has to do with the critical barbs that have been thrown his way. But no one does Kenny like Kenny. And again, Kenny, we love you.
It's so true. And, you know, you too can pick up some of this merch at the Jazziz store, available at jazziz.com. We have all sorts of stuff: stickers, thermoses, t-shirts, mugs, hoodies. Check it out. And we'll see you at brunch wearing our gear. We already got some hellos dropping lines from Patricia in Jersey City. All right, Jersey. Patricia, how can you get a shirt? Head on over to jazziz.com. and click on the store button, jazziz.com/store. You can pick up all this merch. Look as good as Michael and I do.
Or at least as good as you do.
I don't know about that. Well, Michael, we've got a very, very important guest on the line, and I certainly can't wait to start chatting with him. So why don't we welcome... Oh, I'm just getting an extra. We may have to wait a little bit longer. It looks like he may be running a little late for brunch. While we're on the subject... Michael, we might as well talk about our current issue that is out now.
Absolutely.
This one celebrating Charlie Parker's centennial anniversary. This is our spring 2020 issue dedicated almost entirely to Charlie Parker. So we have some phenomenal cover stories here. First of all, this custom illustration by, I believe, Tom Seltzer is the guy's name. Only Jazziz is bringing you these custom illustrations, many of which are available on the Jazziz store. But the issue is dedicated entirely to Charlie Parker. We have talked with some of today's top saxophonists, Joe Lovano, Gary Bartz, Vincent Herring, about Bird's legacy. We take a deep, deep dive into his discography. We round up some quotes about and from Charlie Parker that a lot of people haven't heard before. And that's on top of our usual stuff: album reviews, festival reviews, gear reviews, so on and so forth. This one is already out to subscribers, and we have a new one celebrating Jazz Fusion coming out in June. That is our summer 2020 issue. Well, hey, I heard that doorbell ring. It looks like our guest has walked into our brunch place. He's ready to join us at the booth. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nathan East.
Hey, guys.
Hey, man.
All right.
Good, dude. Wow, what a backdrop.
Oh man, yeah, just a couple of instruments on the wall there. And,
right on. Nathan, the first thing I like to do with guests here on the show is just to check in, you know, like a mental health check-in. How are you doing? How are you holding up through all this? How are you staying sane? What's going on?
I'm going crazy.
We all are, you know.
No,
you're not alone.
Actually, to be honest, it to me, this is like I would have been in Russia right now. And I get to be home with my family. My kids are home from college. So to be home with the wife and kids and the animals, to me, is just like a gift, you know, and we've had some great quality time together. And this is something that I can't even remember that I've had the opportunity to do since I kind of been working, you know, for the last 40 years or so.
Yeah, man. It's so true. There is a silver lining to this, you know, is that we get to be close to our loved ones, you know, to have in our house, in our family, and it is kind of special. I know you're a meditator too.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that helps, as am I, you know, kind of cut through all of the craziness.
I mean, there's a million things that you just never have time for because we're on the daily grind, the treadmill, we're traveling. I mean, I keep a suitcase packed. It's kind of like revolving suitcases, you know. So for me, this is kind of like, wow, all of a sudden, you know, I get this hiatus that I never would have had in my life. You know,
different pace of life, that's for sure, man. Because you mentioned you are extremely busy. Among the most recorded bassists in music, I mean, 2,000 plus recording credits, man. That's remarkable.
I think they just stopped counting after 2000.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, you don't even really, like we all do, we don't really keep track of the stuff. We just go for it, you know. And and
I'm hoping there's one that you kept track of, and that was your first time in the studio to put something on wax. Do you remember that moment?
I do. It was in San Diego with the Patty Family Singers, which is young Sandy Patty was singing in, and I'll never forget those. Like my first recording session, and those guys couldn't have been sweeter. And I just was going, this is incredible, to do something that you love this much. It was just really a powerful moment.
Absolutely. Did you know you always wanted to play bass? Was that the initial instrument, or was that something you fell into later?
The initial instrument was cello.
Okay.
And then that I played that in junior high school for a few years. But when I discovered the bass, it was just like a moment that I was actually in church with my brothers. My brother David played guitar, Ray sang, and there was I'll never forget, a bass on the altar just sitting there, and I couldn't figure out whose it was. So, hey, I wonder if it's okay to pick this up. I picked it up, and all of a sudden I just felt this like this power, just
man.
Wow, this is amazing. And then the guys let me join the band the next day, so.
Awesome, man. You see, I have a bass in the background. It is strictly for effect. You do not want to hear me get on that thing, but I am so interested in the instrument because bass, a lot of people don't understand. It's a very unique thing. On the one hand, it's a melodic instrument. You're crafting counter melodies to a song, but on the other hand, it's very, very rhythmic. You are the rhythmic engine of a jazz group.
Yeah, it's rhythmic, it's harmonic, and it's kind of all those things combined. And it's another thing is if you don't have the bass in the band, you definitely notice. I mean, people don't necessarily focus on the bass, but if it's not there, there's like, wait a second, something's missing.
Felt not heard sometimes is what they
exactly.
say. And I've heard you talk about kind of the two poles of the bass, one being the more melodic side and the other being purely rhythmic, something more of a like in a funk band, really being that rhythmic engine. And I'm wondering, in terms of influences, at least for the electric bass, if you could kind of place players on either side of that pole, like who's the most melodic bass player and who do you turn to for influence in that regard? And on the other side, just the rock, the rhythm, who do you look to in that regard?
Well, I think every bass player would put James Jamerson right here in the middle, all that great Motown and so he kind of turns into the king, and then you have all the the Paul McCartneys of the rock world and Jack Bruce. But when I was coming up, then there was Rocco and Tower of Power, who just took my head away, and then of course Jaco Pastorius ends up being like,
he's all over the spectrum,
genius of geniuses. I mean, I saw a video of him playing piano yesterday with Toots Thielemans, and it's just like he plays his writing playing just beyond anything,
Al Di Meola was on the show a few days ago, and he said Jaco could do it all. Whatever he touched turned to music.
Yeah,
he could swing a toothbrush. Michael knows I'm kind of the music guy, so I love to hear musicians talk about music, and I'm wondering if because I know you got your bass next to you. Two things. If you could think back and remember a bass line, that really just captivated you, caught your attention as just, man, this is the perfect bass line, sculpted from the heavens. If you could recall that bass line. Number two, if you could maybe play it from anyone, as your kid learning bass lines, anything like that.
Oh yeah. Well, there were so many. I feel like we grew up in one of the most fertile times of music, because nothing against computers, but now, you go and buy a computer and you're producer,
Yeah.
And then everybody kind of sits there and you hit go and there's a beat and then, goes from there. But back in the day, I mean, there was Earth, Wind and Fire, Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, all these bands, Cream. And so I used to sit there and in my bedroom and, turn the black light on and I just,
Teenage Nathan East.
but then there was
definition of a pocket, man.
And then I mean, all kinds of just like a wealth of lines.
Totally. So simple, but so solid, man.
Yeah.
So what, baby? Yes.
Yeah, just so much. It's just was so fertile. I remember "Till You Come Back to Me" by Aretha Franklin. Chuck Rainey was playing bass on that. It was like an encyclopedia of bass, you know.
Totally, man. It was a great time for bass players.
Yeah.
And not to mention, you kind of carried that torch through that period and into the early 90s with the creation of Foreplay. And I know Michael is eager to talk about that. The story, as I understand it, from kind of the origin of Foreplay, was that it grew out of a recording session for Bob James' Grand Piano Canyon.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, he called that album and
30 years ago, by the way.
30 years ago. Wow, man. Wow, man. Time flies.
And that's about the time I had met Bob maybe 33 years ago. And he was talking about creating this kind of super group.
Yeah.
And we became friends at the time. So we would talk about artists all the time and who we liked, who we didn't like, what we liked about certain artists. And I remember it was Lee Rittenauer who said that if we're going to bring a bass player into this band, it's got to be Nathan East.
Man, I bless him.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is Bob was doing that session for his record, and he asked Harvey and Lee both independently, you know, who should we get on bass? And they both recommended me, so I paid them well, you know.
Man,
I mean, no,
but it was.
And for me, being such a fan of all those guys, you know, I was in a band that played 8 songs from Harvey Mason's Funk in a Mason Jar album, which is like great.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Bob James, I knew his solos. I had transcribed a lot of his solos. They were all like melodies and perfect, you know. And then Lee, of course, was Captain Fingers. And so as a young musician, you know, I was looking up to those guys. You know, kind of shedding their work, and then so to be in a band with them for me was crazy.
Well, and that's my question. As you're playing, was there a sense that, wow, this kind of core 4, we've got something special here?
Absolutely. There's a song called "Restoration" on the Grand Piano Canyon album of Bob's that, for me, I call it the first Foreplay song because it's quartet, everybody playing, no overdubs, and it just sounds. You can hear the chemistry of the band in that song, and it's, you know, it literally could have been on the first Foreplay record.
Yeah, and you all write too. That's another thing that's very interesting is that you know, a lot of super groups, you have the writers and you have the players. Some are both, but in Foreplay, it seems like you all write, you all contribute. There's a democracy on the bandstand. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because, you know, everybody gets to just bring the tunes in, and it's kind of. It was an ideal situation because we were all doing other gigs, but Bob said, you know, this would be an opportunity just to do something in addition to what we do, and just for the fun of it, you know. And 30 years later.
Yeah, it was a real democracy, you know, and it was so interesting too as new personnel would come to the group, you know, Larry and Chuck. And now Kirk, just to watch how it would shift subtly, you know, in terms of, because you bring a totally new identity into the group, and you all kind of adjust accordingly. You know, it really felt like one of jazz's great democracies. So I'm wondering if you experienced the same, you know, as Larry would come in, as Chuck came in, they would bring something new to the table. Did you find yourself, you know, evolving, making little adjustments?
Absolutely. You know, everybody has their complexion that makes up the sound, you know. So first of all, it was one of those things where who can be the guy that comes in and writes, plays, personality, gets along with the band. And, you know, I think all 3 guitarists that we've had in the band have been perfect. And then Chuck, when he passed away, Kirk Whalum, you know, we had several gigs booked, and Kirk came in and stepped in for him. It really added another, you know, who would have thought, you know, a rhythm section or a quartet, but it wasn't guitar based, guitar piano, but with the sax, you know.
Yeah, man.
So, it's just been fun. It's been a good.
Well, it's been an incredible history for this group, and I'm sure you have your favorite moments. One of mine was off Elixir when Phil Collins, you know, came on to perform "Why Can't It Wait Till Morning," a tune that he had originally written. And that must have been a very cool studio moment to have Phil come in. What was it like to play with him, and what do you think of the arrangement? What you guys did with it? What was that like?
Oh no, it's the spirit of what the group is about, you know. So it was everything we've done has been sort of collective effort, and so we put the song together, and I can remember calling, you know, Phil. I had to kind of go through the office. So when I called his office and the one of the secretaries answered, I said, she said, "What's it regarding?" And I said, "Foreplay." And then she said, "I don't think he can help you out with that." It was, but he was a champion. You know, he sang beautiful, and you know, we figured one of his songs and one of his more obscure songs, you know, that would be fun for him to do, and he had a great time. I remember presenting him with his Foreplay Gold record. You know,
right on.
And yeah, it's great.
A great drummer, a great lover of jazz, you know. Yeah. So that was a very cool moment.
Yeah, Brand X, you know, was his band.
Yeah.
That he used to
play. Unorthodox Behavior, one of my favorite albums.
Exactly. And his playing was just killing. And he's one of my favorite drummers to play with to this day. I mean, his pocket is so unique. I love it.
Was there anyone else? Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to ask Nathan, you know, we're kind of 30 years back, but you have history before that when, you know, from the earliest days when you were basically called on for studio gigs, what was your first big break?
Well, you know, the first real big sessions that I used to do were with Barry White. Mm-hmm. And so I did those records. I was in a band in San Diego that backed him up. He came down and we played for this Stax Review, the band called Power, and we played for all the artists, Rufus Thomas, Barry White out, and after the gig, Barry hired our band, the entire band, to go on tour with him on the spot. You know, I was like 16, you know, and so I went to, you know, played the Apollo Theater, played Madison Square Garden with him, Kennedy Center, and for me, like that was like just the big time. And then he invited me to start recording for his records. So I was in the studio with him. I used to do my gig at the Hilton Cargo Bar at night, and then drive to LA by day and do the Barry White sessions. Ed Green, you know, all the guys were on the session. Ray Parker,
wow,
a lot of guys that, you know, Rittenauer. He had all the cats, and the only thing is he didn't put the musicians' names on the records. So like the first album I did, when I got home, cracked it open, and I looked there, and man, no name, you know. And his theory behind that is he didn't want anybody to steal his sound, you know. So that was his reasoning. But yeah, we did a lot of those records with him. And then after that, Gene Page, who arranged those, was responsible for like a lot of recording. You know, he arranged for Elton John and Houston and the Jacksons, and so Gene started calling me for everything he was doing. You know, so it was great. It was kind of like great to be working with the top arranger, and even though the names didn't go on the record, you know, he knew who to call. So I just remember how exciting those days were, because you know, you go from a guy who's a fan of all these people, next thing you know, you're working with them, and then things progressed. Patrice Rushen was an early influence, and then she recommended me to Hubert Laws.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Joe Sample, Al Jarreau, George Benson. I remember just like, man, these are all my favorite people, and I get to play with them, you know, and become friends with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Quincy was in there somewhere. When you met Quincy, a lot of things started happening. What you were on, I think, Bad on Michael's album?
Yeah. That was the first. He called me for Off the Wall, and I had just left to do this tour with Kenny Loggins. So as I was leaving, I get the call, "Hey, what are you doing this week?" And I was like, "No," you know. So I couldn't make that record, and thankfully he called me again for the next one. And then after that, you know, just doing a juke joint and a lot of. I remember the recording for Juke Joint. I came in, and they were doing Birdland, and Sarah Vaughan was in the studio singing when I walked in, and he calls her and, you know, gets on the mic. I come in, Nate's here and he's just going to play Birdland real quick. He's only going to take him 5-10 minutes. So there's Quincy, Sarah Bond, Bruce Whitty sitting there, and they hit, okay, go. I'm going, okay, no pressure, right?
Yeah, right. Wow, man.
But Quincy's and
that
a dear friend.
Yeah, he's he actually helped me get into the business. Most people don't know this, but there was remember the NARM conventions that we used to have. They used to be the recording, the record labels basically had a convention every year, the National Association of Recording Merchandisers. And I go to my first convention, and I'm not even a member. I to show you how green I was, because I was in medical school at the time, so I pinned my business card to my lapel as if that offered some sort of legitimacy to being there. I didn't realize at the time that it was a red flag that you are not a member. And so
whatever it takes.
I see Bruce Lundvall, and we actually had a meeting on the beach in bathing suits. And he said, "Are you going to the scholarship dinner tonight?" And I said, "No, Bruce, I'm not even a member. I'm just kind of coming here hanging and to meet some people. This is like back in '84." And he said, "No, come with me. Come as my guest." So, I got my suit on, went out that night, met with Bruce, sat at a table. By the way, the performance that night was to a very small dinner group, Stevie Wonder. And at the next table was Quincy Jones, Berry Gordy, Vanity, and a couple other folks. Wow. And I'm like, Quincy Jones, man, I got to meet Quincy Jones. So after a cocktail or two, I had the nerve to walk up to Quincy, and we happened to have our magazine sitting there in the lobby. And I walked up to Quincy, and I was so nervous. I said, "Oh, Mr. Jones, my name is Michael Fagan. I started this magazine, Jazziz." He stands up and said, "I picked up a copy in the lobby. I checked out that is a great magazine. You guys are this is great. This is what the industry needs right now." He was incredibly supportive, and it was like a dream come true. And I said, "Well, Quincy, I would love to do, an interview with you." He goes, no problem at all. He goes, "Give me your card." I give him my card. By the time I got back to Gainesville, Florida, where I lived, there was an overnight package with all this information, photos, who to contact, who the writer should speak with, blah, blah, blah. And that was the beginning of an incredibly long relationship where Quincy just kind of opened doors for me.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that's what he's done for.
That's what he does best. Yeah.
Yeah. And to this day, I mean, he's, Jacob Collier and all the young folks that he's still working with. It's just, I've never seen anything like it. He's like music's godfather.
Not to mention that TV channel, which has been pretty cool, Quest TV. Where you check out those jazz documentaries.
Amazing.
Yeah, man.
He was friends with so many. I mean, he and Ray Charles were like brothers, and then Toots Thillman and all the people. We were the house band at the Montreux Jazz Festival for a few years when he was kind of the MD. And we got to play with so many great people, and he just put together all these great shows. The guy is a visionary, total visionary.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
I love him.
Nathan, one of the things I love about you and your playing is your ability, your soloing ability. You from foreplay and from all your solo work, you're a remarkable improviser. And I don't know if people understand how difficult it can be to solo on a bass, man, because it's like coming out from the basement, and it's a balance of groove and being able to really kind of dazzle with fireworks. Is that something you really shed and worked on early on? Because you got like an almost horn-like sense when you improvise.
Well, thank you. I do kind of try to visualize it as a horn, and of course. Charlie Parker and all the people that set these paths for horn players and musicians, So, and I listened to George Benson a lot growing up, and Wes Montgomery, favorite guitarist, and so, bass we don't really get to step out and solo that much because it's a supportive instrument. So it takes kind of like a little more work to just get that stuff under your fingers, because it's not something we're doing every day. Sax players and guitar players, keyboard, they're soloing every day. So it's even more of a challenge to try. And I just I've always loved melodic solos. And of course, when Jaco Pastorius came out, he just every bass player, he just took us by storm, because it was so melodic and.
Were you transposing any of those lines, Nathan?
Absolutely.
You're transcribing them? You got any under your fingers still?
Let me see. It's been a minute, but let me see.
Yeah, man. I love it, dude. Where else are you going to get to see Nathan East play Jocko lines? And the other, great thing about you is your feel when it comes to slap, which is something I could never get. Slap bass, I feel like is its own unique art form, especially when you do it solo, when the spotlight is just on the bass player and he's got to be everything, the one-man band.
Well, and Larry Graham, again, growing up in an era where, Larry Graham was playing with Sly, and then he did his own solo albums, and I'll never forget all the guys in the band said, "Nate, you got to hear this guy," and there he was playing, and the reason he got so funky is because he was playing duo with an organ, so with no drummer, he just figured I'll be the drummer, and so he just started, took matters into his own hands, and of course transformed all of us bass players. Everybody had to learn his music.
Totally, man. And you, like I say, are great at it when it's just you out front there. You're the one-man band. You've got the rhythm engine going. Could you give us a little more of,
let's see.
Something slappy?
Yeah, let me see. Haven't played that in 40 years. The tune "Hair" by Larry Graham.
Okay. Man, yeah, man. No, you made my day. I'm speechless.
One of the things that I was going to ask you is that you're one of the few artists that you can play an intimate setting with a couple hundred people in the room, maybe sometimes even less than 100 in the room, but you also play at Madison Square Garden.
Oh man!
Tell me about the persona on stage, the energy, the feeling that you get when you're playing for thousands versus when you're in an intimate place for a couple dozen.
It's all the same to me, whether they're 10 people, 10,000, or 1 million. I think the biggest crowd was on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial when President Barack Obama was inaugurated, and there were 2 million people, like the sea of people, and to see that is just an amazing sight. Like shoulder to shoulder for miles, as far as you can see back and to each side. Rock in Rio was 250,000 people. Live Aid was 250,000 people in Philly, and the energy that you get from that many people being in the same place is just incredible. And I hope that at some point we can get back to having concerts of that size, because now you can't get more than 10 people in a room together. So
yeah.
We're gonna have to.
Well,
like a month at the club,
Well, for those who followed you, know that you hosted, headlined, probably the last jazz kind of event, festival, concert series in February, and after that, everything shut down. That was your last live gig or last festival?
That was the last live gig, the Jazz Weekend up in Carmel that Sandy Shore does such a great job at putting all
sure does.
Putting all of us together, and I've known Sandy forever. We've been playing with her. Foreplay played many years ago at her concert series up in Monterey, and it's a beautiful part of the world. And so, this was the Valentine's Day. That was our last kind of public gig, and we had a ball. And little did anybody know that we were going to be shut down after that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I noticed while we're all at our homes, keeping our distance, if you would.
Shelter.
Is that I see, yeah, you mentioned before, getting time to spend with your family. And one of the things that I've noticed, I followed you on video, is your son, Noah, who is turning out to be pretty remarkable pianist.
I'm just ever so kind of proud, and just it does my heart so much good when he sits down and plays. You go from piano lessons to a guy that actually is like another viable musician. One of the things I'm most grateful for now is that Noah and I have had all this quality time together at home to play, and actually we're writing together now to do it like a duo album. So
wonderful,
which is exciting to me because I love, he's played on both my solo albums, and it's just fun because here this guy whose diapers I was changing not too long ago is a really, really fine musician, and he's got some great influence in his life as well. He, Bob James and Greg Fillinganes are both godfathers, too.
Yeah.
And
wow.
So, and he's met Herbie Hancock, and and he's got a great ear. He has perfect pitch, and just when he sits down, it's just like. I used to do a little exercise where I'd play a note and say, play the note Daddy's playing, when he's 5, and then I'd play, and he'd just go, he never like plucked around. Just every note I played, I'd play, and then pretty soon, like you can play like 5-6 notes on the piano, and they'll tell you A flat, D flat, G. I name all the notes as I say, there might be something here. So,
wow, man, what a gift!
It is great. And everyone should check out. It was Herbie Hancock's birthday yesterday. He turned 80, and Noah and Nathan East did a happy birthday tribute. Noah on piano, Nathan on bass, of course, and it's beautiful. I saw it and I said, man, what a great birthday present.
Yeah, well, we, and obviously, it takes a lot of guts as piano to play something for Herbie.
Yeah, right.
They had called and said, "Hey, can you send a little video message?" And so we had fun making that for Herbie. And happy birthday, Herbie! Wow, 80.
Well, that's right, 80. 80 on Sunday. Yeah. So you mentioned, an album. We were talking a little bit before the show that an album with your son Noah may be in the works in the future. The last album with Foreplay was Silver. Back when that was 2015, right? A 25th anniversary album, which I imagine must have been a surreal moment because you had recorded in sound studio in Hollywood, right? Where you recorded your debut album.
Sunset Sound, yeah.
Yeah, Sunset Sound, that's right. Did that feel like a surreal moment to you to be like, wow, man, we have been steering this ship for 25 years?
Absolutely. I remember, just vividly our first record, and then I think that we have at least a dozen, maybe 12, 13 records under our belt, including the Christmas album, Best Of. And I tell you what, Chuck Loeb really too was one of the greatest guys ever. Just nice guy. His compositions were phenomenal, and his playing, was even better. Articulate, soulful. I mean, in one guy, you have everything. The greatest guy, funny, and the last time I got to spend with him, we played Berks Jazz Festival in Reading, Pennsylvania, and then I drove him back to New York, and that was the last time I saw him.
Oh wow,
yeah.
Well, the Silver album. I was talking to Bob James about this the other day. When you put out so many Foreplay albums, and the Silver album comes out, and it's an anniversary album, my immediate response before I even listened to it was, well, they put out so many albums. What could they possibly say that's new after all this time? And the surprise that I got, and I picked it as album of the year that year, was you had a lot to say. And in fact, there are a couple of Foreplay albums for me that were just spectacular standouts. And this is one of them. And it came after so many Foreplay albums. It winds up being one of the best Foreplay albums.
I enjoy it. I went back to it a few weeks ago just to kind of check out one of my favorite songs on that is December Dream that Chuck wrote, and I was really just inspired by, how fresh it felt. And yeah, it's hard to just trying to keep coming up and keep digging deeper and going, okay, what haven't we done, and,
right.
Still with that album, which was 25th anniversary, we were still find some magic, and it's a lot of fun to still listen to for me.
That's what I liked about it. Well, it wasn't a retrospective. Okay, we're going to cover the greatest hits again. It was, we were very much still looking forward, 25 years in. So, Kirk toured with you afterwards. Kirk Whalen toured with you afterwards. Is there any notion that a new album might be on the horizon, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how much public information I can share, but we have been in talks about putting out a new record and getting back together. Yeah.
Excellent.
And how about your solo? Your solo projects. Interestingly, on Yamaha.
Yes.
Tell us, because I know you play Yamaha great instruments, and a lot of people don't know that they're a record label as well, or they have a record label division. In fact, I was introduced to Yamaha years ago from Lee Ritenour. He had a couple albums years back on Yamaha. Tell me about that, how that works, and because we'd love to see another Nathan East album.
Yeah, well, that's in the works as well. As I can go public with that, because we've already been talking about my third solo album. I've been playing Yamaha instruments. This is my solo bass. This is my signature bass, and I've been playing Yamaha instruments for coming up on 40 years. The first time I was handed one, well, Abraham Laboriel let me check his out. I remember the A&M Studios, and I said, "Oh, this is great!" So they gave me Hagi's name in Japan, and I went there with Lee Ritenour in 1981.
Wow!
I was toured with Lee, and they put the first Yamaha on my bass in my hands, and I took it home, and I've been playing them ever since. So it's been a long relationship. And then when they started the label, it just seemed like a sort of a very natural transition to go and do a record with him. So that was already 2013. So we
well, I not that this is a plug for Yamaha, but this is you have one of these as a bass. It's their silent guitar,
right?
Which the reason I use it is so no one can hear me play.
So you just look like you know what you're doing.
I was telling Demiola this the other day. I'm the worst guitar player in the world, and it's pretty sad because I've been playing for about 50 years. But I like collecting guitars. I don't have quite as many as you. So when it comes to your guitars, Yamaha, and I'm sure there are others as well. You have 4-string, 5-string, 6-string.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there a 7-string or a 3-string?
No. I think between the 5 and the 6 is my comfort zone. And it's funny because that one that I have is kind of like a travel bass. Apparently a lot of pilots have the guitar that you have, the silent guitar, because it fits in a little case and you can kind of throw it in. And that was one of the reasons that inspired me to help them. We're actually working on a custom bass that could be for travel. So it's headless, so it's a little shorter. I can always get it in the overhead compartment, and it's lighter for carrying around. Sometimes you have to walk a mile when you get to the
Oh yeah.
And then it's just one of those things where it's a little easier to travel with. But yeah. Silent bass is great. I remember too when Chick Corea asked me to sub for John Patitucci in the electric band few shows a couple of years ago. I can remember having my bass on the plane, practicing for 11 hours for the duration of the flight, because his music, you have to have chops ready to go. And and they've been a great company, so it very natural progression to sign with them for the label.
Cool. I had some questions about acts that you had toured and recorded with, because I came across a quote of you saying that Daft Punk, you were kind of impressed with the level of musicianship from this electronic duo. Is that the case?
Absolutely, and they've done some great soundtrack work.
Totally.
And you know, those guys, the great thing about them is they'll do a show for 45,000 fans and then be able to take the mask off and walk out with
right. Just sneak out, go to lunch, and nobody will bother them.
Exactly. And I just think that's one of the coolest things. And they're great guys, very creative. And that record was just a fun experience because we did these songs. They actually came back, and Nile Rodgers had added guitar and put a bunch of bits on Get Lucky.
Wow. Right.
And so I just said, let me get one more shot at the bass, you know, because then I wanted to play as if I was playing with Nile, you know, and like sort of a Bernard Edwards type bass line feel. So that's what we came up with for that. The guys are really meticulous, but they really, you know, captured some magical musical moments that touched the world. You know, I mean, I was
totally
France, Italy, riding down the street, Asia, and you'd hear these tunes coming out, you know, blasting out cars, apartments, and the record was great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, you know, my question is going to be: can we hear a little bit of that "Get Lucky" bass line that you laid down?
Yeah, let me see. I have the 5 string. I mean, I have this is tuned with the high C, but I mean,
yeah, man, I could just hear Pharrell singing over the top of that, man. That was a hit. That was a worldwide hit, man.
And the fun thing was playing it on the Grammys with Pharrell and Stevie Wonder. And
that's right. They didn't give you a mask, did they?
No.
I think that was your face.
Yeah.
We used our faces, but we did dress up kind of retro. You know, they had like a stylist there, and everybody had like retro bell-bottom jeans. And
cool, man. Cool. And then, yeah, the other, you know, big association that people know you from is with Eric Clapton, you know, on the road.
Yeah, well, Eric's, you know, he's a dear friend, you know, and like a brother after all these years. It's been, again, coming up on 40 years since I first played with him. And we've traveled around the globe, you know, 50 times, Japan, you know, all around Europe. But we actually had a summer tour planned in Europe that I got the call a couple weeks ago. Okay, it's being moved. So there's not much more I could say. He's the absolute best. I love him.
Yeah, man. And a great lover of all forms of music, you know?
Yeah. Oh, no, he comes out, we go to the record store and he comes out with like an armful of jazz records, you know, Charlie Parker and Wes. And I mean, he's amazing. He loves everything, you know. As long as it has a lot of heart to it, you know, he loves it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, hey, Nathan, before we wrap up, Michael didn't know I was going to ask you this question. I've been waiting all morning to ask it because you and I actually have something in common, Nathan, and it's certainly not our bass playing. It's not our pin collecting either, but it is our love for magic.
Wow. I love it.
I know you are an amateur magician. You are a member of the Magic Castle. Is that true?
Yeah, a member of the Magic Castle and the Magic Circle.
Wow.
All right, but I got to know how you got into magic, and because I want to hear that story.
You know, I've always loved magic since I was a kid.
Same here.
And you know, and there was a gentleman that came to one of our shows, and he did some magic, and then I said, "Come on, we have to." So he came to my hotel room, and he showed me all kinds of tricks, and then I joined the castle, and so when you join, like magicians do the same as musicians. You jam. You go to.
That was my other question. Is there any,
pick a guy's house? We go over with our mats, and we do cards, coins, everything, and so you know. But
here we go.
Okay.
You like that French drop? Here we go.
That was
Jazz. It's exclusive.
Here you go. So if you can see, it's on that finger, and then it just jumps from the other finger to
the old magic ring routine.
And it's the old magic ring.
Hey, nice.
Hey, we're here for Thursday.
Exactly. I love it, man. I know you're also a big ping pong guy. So well,
that's the other thing. I got the table set up. So since everybody's home, we've been we've got a lot of games of ping pong going here at the house, and so for me, actually, this has been sort of like a chance to just catch up with my family, because it's been, when I was when the kids were born, my twins Sarah and Noah, I used to come home from a tour and they drew pictures of the family and I wasn't in the pictures, so it broke my heart. And all of us that play as musicians, we make our living in the studio or on the road, but I've been on the road like a large percentage of my life, so for me, this is an opportunity to be home and really have some quality time.
Excellent, man.
That's great.
Well, offline, we'll have to talk. I've got a mean chop cup routine to show you, an ambitious card routine. So I'm right there with you, man.
And I want to say too, thanks for because the magazine sort of really kept everybody informed as to what's going on. I'll never forget when Foreplay had a chance to be in Jazziz on the cover, and that was a big moment for us. And just want to thank you guys for. When I was growing up, Downbeat was the go-to magazine, and I think you've really provided a platform for the people to know what's going on and who's doing what, and so thank you for that.
Well, thank you, man. And if people want to follow along, with what's going on with you right now, where's the best place to do that? Your website, Facebook, Twitter?
Yeah, all of that. I mean, I'm on Twitter under Nathan East, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, nathaneast.com. All, kind of, now, we used to I have to go down and I have to take the summer schedule off. I think I put it on the website, all the dates have been moved.
Yeah, I know.
And like I said, I would have been in Russia these next couple of weeks, touring with a group over there. So we'll be back hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah,
I hope so, man. And
Absolutely.
you heard it from Nathan himself. Maybe another solo album on the horizon. Maybe another Foreplay album on the horizon. Definitely a light at the end of this tunnel, because we are going to get through this thing, and there will be jazz on the other side, man.
Absolutely.
And another duo album with Noah.
That's right. A lot to look forward to.
So, we're having fun. This is a good time. So just everybody be safe too. And I can't shout out enough to those folks that are the healthcare workers and professionals. I mean, these guys are saving lives and then having to go home and have their own lives. So let's all keep them in our prayers, because the job they're doing is unbelievable, and they're like soldiers now on the front line.
For sure.
Amen to that.
On the front lines.
Yeah.
Nathan East. Yeah, exactly.
We'd be in trouble.
Big time. Big time. Nathan East, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. Were you about to play something and I just stopped you? Did I create? Hey, man.
Yeah.
Hey, man. That's its own kind of magic. Yeah. Nathan East, thank you so much for joining us for brunch today. This was really great. We appreciate you chatting with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Nate.
Appreciate the brunch.
Best to the family. Stay
it's on
well
us.
And safe.
Okay. Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much to Nathan East for joining us on the program today. We hope you enjoyed that interview. I know I certainly did. And thank you for putting up with my magic trick. We will be back tomorrow with Nick Finzer, a phenomenal trombonist who runs the record label Outside in Music that is doing a lot for independent artists right now. So for any of you independent artists listening or friends of independent artists, tomorrow is going to be the day to tune in for sure. Speaking of independent artists, we're doing our part to help as well. We have a program called Inside Track. You know, independent artists email me all the time asking, hey, how can I get my music into the hands of a Jazziz editor? Well, this is a way to do it, especially now with the mail being kind of wishy-washy. You just go to jazziz.com/inside-track or visit jazziz.com and click submit your music up there at the top of the navigation bar. You submit everything about your album, the title, the personnel, the album. You can give us a SoundCloud link or a Bandcamp link, and it all comes directly to us, to my inbox, to other editors' inboxes. We listen to it. I promise you, we listen to every single one. We post it on the site under new releases. And not only that, but you'll also be considered for things like Song of the Day posts, inclusion in our weekly newsletters, in our weekly playlists, or hey, you might even end up on this very show. So for any independent artists out there, please check out jazziz.com's Inside Track. Okay, we will be back again tomorrow at 11 a.m. again with Nick Finzer, and then Friday we're going to round off the week with drummer Peter Erskine. In the meantime, I invite you to check out all of the content on jazziz.com. Right now, we've got all of the digitized material from our spring 2020 issue, as well as exclusives for our April digital issue featuring interviews with Jimmy Green and Thundercat. Right now, we're offering a special. You can subscribe for 3 months of unlimited digital access for just 99 cents per month. Plus, we'll enroll you to receive our summer 2020 issue. So you get one free print issue as well, all for just 99 cents per month for 3 months. All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I am Brian Zimmerman, digital content editor for Jazziz Magazine. It was a pleasure having brunch with you, and we will see you tomorrow.